Well, results have started trickling in as INEC declares all Progressives Grand Alliance candidates, while Kumo Amakoromo, winner of the Yenagoa Constituency 2 State Assembly rerun election. Amakoromo polled 5,959 votes, ahead of his main rival, Ebiowo Koku Obiai of the People's Democratic Party, who scored 5,263 votes to retain his seat in the Bayelsa State House of Assembly. Okay, let's have our conversation now with Frank Tietie, a rice analyst, on whether any lessons have been learned so far from the last elections and what to make of today's exercise across the country. Hello, Frank.
Thank you.
Warm welcome to Newsnight.
My pleasure.
Some have described it as appalling, sham, and the rest. Isolated elections, by-elections, and we're having the level of violence. People are still snatching boxes. I want to wonder where they get the energy from in this palace economy. Have we really learned any lessons here? The electorate.
Well, I think that the political class has a lot to answer in that question. But I deal more with the issue of voter apathy. We didn't see quite much that responsibility of civic and voter education being exercised by INEC this time around. So once we have a situation of rerun that is not the usual election cycle, it's very difficult to mobilize Nigerians to vote, except the elections have to have the normal trappings of what we've been dealing with, called voter inducement. In this case, we haven't seen any form of report saying that there is vote buying. So if you ask me, I wouldn't start on a very sad note and on a very somber note that it's all bad. We haven't had reports of vote buying, so which means voter inducement actually has been low. In terms of violence, it beats the imagination how politicians still use violence as a factor in winning elections. And I'm very excited that that police officer,
Gomel, the commissioner of police in Kano.
Much credit to that police officer. Him, yeah. I think he deserves more than a national award because he's had a history of actually busting much of all of these electoral violence and known crimes. That's the kind of thing. Police is expected to prevent crime. Know for certain that anytime that the elections are widely marred by violence, it's not necessarily the fault of INEC. It's the police commissioner of that state should actually be held responsible, because basically when election is approaching in an area, or whether it's statewide, the commissioner of police in that state takes full responsibility for the security of both INEC officials and the general conduct of the election. So if we are having a wide level of insecurity, the police commissioner needs to be checked. Again, but when you now look at the fact that have we really learned anything? I keep telling you that it's a matter of culture. Have we imbibed the sufficient political culture that realizes that this is a matter of service? Nigerians are tired, apart from the harsh economic situation, and then together with this very intractable insecurity that Nigeria is facing. It will take a whole lot for politicians to be able to mobilize persons to come out to vote.
What a shame, and even those mobilized, are not even allowed to exercise their franchise freely. We still hear of ballot box snatching, disruption of something otherwise that should be a peaceful process.
Let's understand something. So long that a deviant behavior, a wrongful behavior, and a criminal behavior in the form of threat or use of violence during election, so long as we do not see that consistent, action by the state to punish, to arrest, prosecute, and send such persons to prison, and then be named and shamed the way Lagos State names and shames sex offenders, we will not have anything different. So if you re-emphasize the reason, the point that whether or not we have learned anything, especially in terms of violence, you see, the Electoral Act has made sufficient provision for definition of various offences that can be that can be done before during and after elections. And why is it that after all of these many election cycles, apart from the pockets of, INEC officials that have compromised elections, famous of which the one that Mikey Guinea saw to, that professor that was being prosecuted and all that. Apart from that, you wouldn't really see that consistent and concerted effort by INEC to punish any of these offenders.
INEC is not a prosecuting agency. INEC, look, listen, INEC had said sometime last year, I think the last quarter of last year, that look, we forwarded the names of those who breached the law during the elections to the prosecuting authorities.
I think it's shanking its responsibilities. It definitely can invoke its powers or to initiate, such forms of prosecution. Ideally, correctly, it is the Attorney General of the Federation that should carry out such forms of prosecution. But it doesn't stop INEC. If INEC can carry on cases in the regular courts, it can as well deploy its legal officers to ensure that there are certain officials that can be prosecuted. If were not for Mikey Guinea's insistence as an resident electoral officer against that professor who actually compromised that election, he wouldn't have ever been prosecuted. So INEC has to have that strong resolve and a policy direction towards ensuring prosecution of electoral offenders. After all, it is the principal witness. It has all the facts. It has all its officials are the ones that will be presented as witnesses. So unless INEC is at the center of driving a prosecutorial, move of the Electoral Act, we wouldn't have a reduction in electoral violence. We wish to see some persons, even high-level persons, and those low-level persons in Kano that were arrested, to be sent to prison. Prosecuted and sent to prison, so that whenever persons are being recruited for electoral violence, they will think twice, knowing that they may not come back as free men.
You think a lesson can be drawn from these by-elections, both by the electorate, the political actors themselves who recruit the thugs amongst the people? Lessons
will always be learned. INEC needs to always learn lessons that, for goodness sake, it should always be in control of its processes and not allow insecurity to actually make nonsense of the much preparation that it has made for all of these elections. Again, on the negative side, politicians now know that INEC would not always deploy resources to mobilize people, to encourage people to come and vote. That they will have to, not necessarily politicians, but political parties all together, must now join forces to go from house to house. Election is not something that you expect people to do for you as a form of, as if they're doing any form of token to you or one kind of respect. People, political parties, candidates must see elections as something that they need to be issue-based, and then make people realize that whenever any form of election is made and candidates are chosen, certain aspects of their lives will be chosen. Will be changed. In that case, they must now go from neighbor to neighbor, door to door, and all that stuff. Gathering people in constituencies for the purpose of voting. What we've seen, especially in a cosmopolitan area like Lagos, to see that where it is in a place where you have 800 voters, and then 800 voters, and then you have only barely 100 coming out in a cosmopolitan place like Lagos, it shows that the level of consciousness of this particular by-election is very low, abysmally low.
Isn't it what has happened in the last two general elections? The level of consciousness, the level of turnout has been abysmal.
Because I don't think we have the time to discuss the fact that it's as a result of failure of governance. When the people have a sense of being emasculated from the government process and do not actually relate policies of government, they don't tie it to the outcomes of elections, and then the people become fallen. They become very disconnected. So that's the reason why. So it depends. Unfortunately, that when it now becomes when elections are either ethnically or religiously charged, that you can now find people being swayed by their emotions. So all the time, our elections need not be moved by one form of tribal sentiment or one form of competitive jingoism for people to now take it up as a challenge. Rather, there needs to be more effort, especially on the part of civil society organizations, to make Nigerians know that elections actually determine the quality of life that they will have in the next 4 years, in terms of taxes, in terms of provision of social infrastructure, in terms of a government that is responsive, not a government that appears to be a bully, like we see experience every day in the FCT, where we get threats upon threats and very unresponsive policies. I mean, it shows you that these are persons who did not connect to the people that voted for them, and that's what we get. And then when the Nigerians begin to think that it doesn't matter after all, whatever we vote, whether or not we vote, somebody will come out. Now it becomes a problem for INEC, meaning INEC will have to show that sovereignty indeed belongs to the people, and that they should guard jealously, that power of the people to determine, that franchise to determine those who control political power. Unless INEC is able to really make the people be in control, the people always feel they are not in control, and that sovereignty belongs to the man who controls more violence, who has more money to buy the people's conscience, and who also can overturn elections by influencing electoral officers.
Well, definitely a time is coming the people of Nigeria would take control of their own destiny.
Only if they get conscious.
They cannot continue like this.
I agree with you.
Thank you very much, Barrister Frank Tete, Arise analyst, for coming to shed some light on the by-elections in Nigeria today.